Sick, I think. Good evening. I would like to call to order the City Council meeting for the City of Wheat Ridge, Colorado for April 10th, 2023. If you would please stand as you are able and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Would the clerk please call the roll of the members?
Judy Hutchinson,
Present.
Rachel Holteen, absent. Amanda Weaver,
Here.
Janice Hoppy,
Present.
Corey Stites,
Present.
Scott Ohm,
Here.
Leah Dozman, Valerie Nosler-Beck.
Here.
Mr. Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Councilors, in your packet, you have minutes for this for the March 6th, the 2023 study session notes and the March 13th, 2023 City Council meeting minutes. Are there any changes to be noted? Seeing none, we'll let the minutes stand as presented. Any changes to the agenda? Seeing none, we'll go with the agenda as presented. We have some proclamations today, so I'll go to the podium. And if I could ask for, thank you, Phil Schroeder, our CSO supervisor, to join me at the podium. Phil, come on up. Thank you. Nice to have you with us tonight. Thank you. I'm pleased to provide a proclamation to designate the week of April 9th through 15th, 2023 as Animal Care and Control Officer Appreciation Week. Whereas animal care and control personnel provide essential community functions by enforcing animal control laws, protecting the public from diseases such as rabies, and educating the public on the proper care of community pets. And whereas animal care and control personnel risk life and limb by going out into the public to protect the welfare of helpless animals and pets that are rescued from injury, disease, abuse, and starvation. And whereas animal care and control officers conduct humane investigations and protect animals from abusers and people from dangerous animals. And whereas the accomplishments of the animal care and control officers achieved through compassion and collaboration defend and are the voice of justice for the voiceless victims they often defend in a court of law. And whereas the City of Wheat Ridge is hereby dedicated to showing our appreciation to the animal care and control officers, such as the city's community service officers, who endorse the bond between animals and humans advocating for responsible ownership by setting standards of professionalism in public safety and animal welfare. Therefore, I, Bud Starker, Mayor of the City of Wheat Ridge, do hereby proclaim the week of April 9 through 15, 2023 as Animal Care and Control Officer Appreciation Week and reaffirm the city's commitment to supporting the men and women tasked with enforcing regulations, bylaws, and ordinance regarding animal control. Dated this 10th day of April, 2023. And that's for you. Would you like to say a few words? Thank you.
I'll be brief. I want to thank every one of the City Council members, Mayor Starker, for this recognition of National Animal Control Week. It's important to us, and on behalf of all the Community Services team officers, myself, Supervisor Marie Trujillo, CSO Barb Webb, Timothy Haynes, and Tristan Semick, we appreciate the award. Thank you very much. And on behalf, of course, of working with the Wheat Ridge Police Department, we have a duty and a responsibility to the animal community in this city to do the right thing, to investigate and to prove right from wrong and take care of those animals that can't speak for themselves. So again, on behalf of our CSOs, I appreciate the award and I'll gladly accept it for them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I would like to invite Detective Sherry Ells to join me at the podium. Thank you for being here. Good, great to see you. This is a proclamation to designate the week of April 23rd through the 29th, 2023 as National Crime Victims' Rights Week. Whereas the victims' rights movement has resulted in the passage of laws at the local, state, and federal levels that establish essential rights for victims. And whereas the rights of crime victims are best protected when all participants in the criminal justice process, not only victims, are appropriately educated about victims' rights. And whereas supporting victims of crime is crucial to the U.S. justice system because our support honors the experiences of victims and allows them to find autonomy and empowerment through achieving self-defined goals. And whereas the accomplishment of the victims' rights movement achieved through compassion and collaboration and built on the courageous advocacy of individual victims and their families across the country inspire in us hope for future progress and greater healing. And whereas the City of Wheat Ridge is hereby dedicated to strengthening victims and survivors in the aftermath of crime, building resilience in our communities and our victim service providers, and bringing hope and healing to all victims and survivors. Now, therefore, I, Bud Starker, Mayor of the City of Wheat Ridge, and the Wheat Ridge City Council, do hereby proclaim the week of April 23 through 29, 2023 as Crime Victims' Rights Week, and reaffirm the city's commitment to creating a victim service and criminal justice response that assists all victims of crime, and to express our sincere gratitude and appreciation for those community members, victim service providers, and criminal justice professionals who are committed to improving our response to all victims of crime so that they may find relevant assistance, support, justice, and peace. Dated the 10th day of April, 2023. This is for you. Thank you very much. Say a few words. Thank you.
Mayor, City Council, City Manager, and Chief, it's our honor to accept the proclamation for National Victims' Rights Week. Delivering true justice requires we provide all victims with the support they need. It takes enormous courage and extraordinary strength to emerge from life's most painful moments. As a nation, we must all work together to stop crimes before they happen and give victims the support they need to restore a sense of trust and safety and to move toward healing and justice. We accept the proclamation, and it is our honor to serve victims in their time of need. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Have you got yours? There you go. Thank you. I'd like to ask, Jeff Streeter to come forward at the podium. Thank you for being here. I'm pleased to provide a proclamation in support of 2023 National Telecommunications Week. To recognize National Public Safety Telecommunications Week 2023 and to honor the service of the 118 men and women who respond to emergency calls, dispatch emergency professionals and equipment, and render life-saving assistance to the citizens of Wheat Ridge. Whereas emergencies can occur at any time that require police, fire, or emergency medical services. And whereas when an emergency occurs, the prompt response of police officers, firefighters, and paramedics is critical to the protection of life and the preservation of property. And whereas The safety of our police officers and firefighters is dependent upon the quality and accuracy of information obtained from citizens who telephone the JEFCOM 911 Emergency Communications Center. And whereas public safety telecommunicators are the first and most critical contact our citizens have with emergency services. And whereas public safety telecommunicators are the single vital link for our police officers and firefighters by monitoring their activities by radio, providing them information, and ensuring their safety. And whereas public safety telecommunicators of JEFCOM 911 have contributed substantially to the apprehension of criminals, suppression of fires, and treatment of patients. And whereas each telecommunicator has exhibited compassion, understanding, and professionalism during the performance of their job in the past year. Now therefore, be it resolved that I, Bud Starker, and the City Council of the City of Wheat Ridge formally declare April 9 through 15, 2023 as National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week in Wheat Ridge, Colorado, and honor the men and women whose diligence and professionalism keep our city and citizens safe. Resolved this 10th day of April, 2023. Would you like to say a few words? Thank you.
Mayor, council, city manager, chief, thank you. Thank you for taking the time for this proclamation. It means so much to the staff of JEFCOM. As the mayor said, I have approximately 118 emergency communicators that work in this center. This center last week just celebrated 5 years of operations, if you can believe that. It seemed like a short time ago we were just talking about building this. As the executive director, I'm privileged to work with these individuals. They're committed to service, quality service, but they do it with pride. There's over 6,000 emergency communication centers in the country, and JEFCOM has grown into a premier center and one of the largest, believe it or not, with our volume. So this is about them. This is about the work that they do. We're privileged to have Wheat Ridge part of this center and the commitment to work together and collaborate. We're honored. I'm honored to stand here and receive this proclamation on their behalf, and thank you very much for taking this time.
Thank you very much. Thanks so much. I would like to invite Mary Hester and Benny Pies to join me at the podium. Thank you for coming. This is a celebration. This is a proclamation in celebration of Earth Day, which is April 22nd, 2023, and National Arbor Day on April 28th, 2023. Whereas all people, regardless of race, gender, income, or geography, have a right to a healthy, sustainable environment with economic growth and opportunity. And whereas we are all caretakers of our planet and have an obligation to combat climate change and environmental degradation to preserve the Earth's beauty and resources. And whereas this year marks the 53rd anniversary of the Earth Day movement, let it be known that the City of Wheat Ridge, Colorado, encourages all businesses, institutions, and individuals to celebrate the Earth and commit to caring for the planet and its resources. And whereas trees provided one of the first business opportunities in Wheat Ridge in the 1860s, and whereas trees continue to be an important part of the quality of life to community members and visitors, enhancing property values and community spirit. And whereas residents, businesses, green industry, elected officials, and staff continue to work together to maintain and provide a healthy tree canopy throughout the City of Wheat Ridge as part of a comprehensive community forestry program. And whereas the City of Wheat Ridge has been awarded Tree City USA by the National Arbor Foundation for 43 consecutive years. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Bud Starker, and the City Council for the City of Wheat Ridge do hereby declare Saturday, April 22nd as City of Wheat Ridge Earth Day Celebration Day, encouraging people in Wheat Ridge to combat climate change and environmental degradation, support green economy initiatives, and inspire others to undertake similar actions. And I also declare Friday, April 28th, 2023, as City of Wheat Ridge Arbor Day Celebration Day, and encourage community members and businesses of Wheat Ridge to care for, enjoy, and appreciate the trees in your yard and neighborhood. I'm not sure who's going to come, but would you like to say a few words? Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mayor and City Council, for recognizing Earth Day and Arbor Day. These days aren't just about celebrating the beauty of nature, but also recognizing the challenges facing our planet and thinking through how we as a community can come together and work towards a more sustainable future through reducing our carbon footprints, water conservation, and other sustainable practices. So to that note, I'd like to highlight a few opportunities to take those steps that are happening right now. Wheat Ridge is participating in a National Mayor's Challenge for Water Conservation, which runs the whole month of April. And I encourage everyone to take a short pledge. You can visit mywaterpledge.com or just check out the city's website. There's a newsflash on the front page. And we are also recruiting for new neighborhoods to join the Sustainable Neighborhoods program. So you can check us out on the city's website, or there's a flyer back at the sign-in table there. And we do have an open house coming up this Wednesday, April 12th, in Council Chambers at 5:30 p.m. So I will wrap it up, but thank you again, Mayor and City Council, for recognizing these two very important days.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thanks so much for all you do.
Mr. Mayor, maybe before you start, I would like to, Benny was shy, didn't come up and speak, but just want to make sure everybody gets to meet Benny Pies as our new parks manager. Been on board for several weeks now.
Okay.
So
Benny,
thank you.
thanks so much. We appreciate having you with us. Okay, we will now go to our public's right to speak. Members of the public may come and speak to council on any item that is not on the agenda during the public's right to speak. We will have an opportunity on the agenda items to speak to them at that time. So I have no one signed up to speak, but if you would like to speak and have not signed up but are here, you may do so now. Or if you are joining us online and would like to speak, please raise your hand in the virtual format and we will bring you into the meeting. And I'll give everybody just a moment to see if we have any speakers wanting to come on. And I'm getting the word that we don't have anyone, so we will close our citizens' right to speak and move to our agenda item number 1. This is the consent agenda. Oh, yeah, thank you very much. Mayor Pro Tem has reminded me that we have a special study session right after this, right after our council meeting, and we take comment on this at this time. So I have one person signed up to speak on the study session, and this would be on agenda items that are on the study session. And Miranda Thompson is here. And if you would please come to the podium and give us your first name and your last name and an address. And then we have about 3 minutes allocated for your presentation.
Thank you. Miranda Thompson. The address I'm using is my work address, 645 Parfett Street, Lakewood, Colorado, 80215. I'm here on behalf of the Points West Syringe Exchange Program and Jefferson County Public Health to speak on agenda item 1. I'm here today to oppose the proposed change to narrow the scope of paraphernalia immunity for syringe service participants in Wheat Ridge. Though Points West is called a syringe service program, our program always has and continues to provide many supplies outside of syringes that reduce harms associated with drug use. Items that would be considered paraphernalia under this amendment. Our program serves all people who use drugs, not just those who inject, as we see all people who use drugs benefiting from our education and supplies. Syringe service programs like ours have been proven to benefit the communities, as according to the CDC, they are safe, effective, cost-saving, do not increase illegal drug use or crime, and play an important role in reducing the transmission of viral hepatitis, HIV, and other infections. We do not encourage substance use, but rather encourage safer methods of substance use. And in fact, quote, new users of syringe service programs are 5 times more likely to enter drug treatment and about 3 times more likely to stop using drugs than those who do not use the programs, unquote, CDC. Like those proposing this change to the ordinance, our program recognizes that the changing drug supply, notably the increase of fentanyl, has been accompanied by a change in drug using practices. We do see people smoking drugs more than injecting, which has directly led to a decrease in soft tissue infections among our participants. Switching the mode of ingesting drugs from injecting to a safer route of administration, such as smoking or snorting, is a harm reduction tool our program commonly employs, as these methods reduce transmission of bloodborne pathogens and reduce instances of tissue infection. By only providing exemption to participants with syringes, Wheat Ridge would spread a dangerous message that injecting drugs is safer and more protective than other modes of drug use. We have also seen that the increase of fentanyl use has led to an increase in overdoses. Our program provides the life-saving opiate overdose reversal drug naloxone. Since September of 2019, our participants have used our naloxone to successfully reverse overdose for at least 56 residents in zip code area 80033. We worry greatly that participants will not access naloxone from us if they cannot safely access any of the other supplies they need for safe use, meaning these participants will no longer be in positions to save lives or have their lives saved. The proposed amendment does not support a housing-first approach to addressing homelessness in Wheat Ridge. Criminal charges limit individuals' abilities to access resources like housing and employment. We recently had a program participant in Wheat Ridge denied a housing opportunity because of a paraphernalia conviction. We recognize that individuals can much more successfully address issues like substance use when their basic needs are met. This amendment would make it more difficult for our most vulnerable community members to improve their circumstances. We have served 177 people from zip code area 80033 since 2018. We see the need for our work in Wheat Ridge, and we implore the council to reject this amendment to the exemption law. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have anybody else signed up to speak on the any study session item, but if you're here and haven't signed up and would like to speak, you may do so now. If you are joining us online, you may raise your hand and we'll bring you into the meeting. And I'll see if we have anyone.
Mr. Mayor, Maxwell Johnson has raised his hand,
Okay. If
and I have asked him to unmute.
Okay. Mr. Johnson, if you'd unmute, please give us your first name and last name and an address, and tell us what agenda item you're speaking on. We will, you'll have 3 minutes to address the council.
Thank you very much, council members. My name is Maxwell Johnson. I too will be using 645 Parfett Street in Lakewood. I am the supervisor over the harm reduction program. I am not going to need the entire 3 minutes, but I do appreciate it. Miranda did a phenomenal job of summarizing the concerns in regards to speaking against the drug paraphernalia offense code amendment. Just wanted to reiterate that we do care about all of the community members within Jefferson County, and specifically in this circumstance, Wheat Ridge. By making this amendment, it would be taking tools out of our bag that are keeping people alive and healthy long enough to link them to care, to transitional housing, to the things that they need to live a life that is healthier, free of possible infection, and also to change their outcomes long term. So I do hope that you would consider voting in opposition to this amendment change, and I sincerely appreciate the council's time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Johnson. Is there anyone else here or joining us online that would like to speak on the study session agenda items? Any of the items? Please raise your hand in the virtual format or come to the podium. And I don't see anybody coming forward, so we'll close our public's right to speak, and we will move to agenda item number 1. This is our consent agenda item, and Councilor Hoppe, would you please introduce this item?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are several items on the consent agenda item tonight. I'd like to ask council if there's anything they'd like to remove for individual discussion, that we do that now before I read everything into record.
And seeing none, we will consider them all.
Excellent. Consent agenda item 1A, resolution number 11-2023, a resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement among the City of Wheat Ridge, the City of Lakewood, the City of Wheat Ridge, and the West Metro Fire Protection District for the use and maintenance of a shared radio communications system. At issue, this agreement sets forth rights and responsibilities regarding ownership and utilization of the radio system jointly owned and shared by the City of Lakewood, the City of Wheat Ridge, and the West Metro Fire Protection District. This agreement also addresses radio system maintenance as well as individual agency equipment maintenance services and costs provided by Lakewood's Radio Communications Division. Consent Agenda Item 1B, Resolution Number 12-2023, a resolution amending the 2023 fiscal year general fund budget to reflect the approval of a supplemental budget appropriation in the amount of $18,584 to accept a grant from the Colorado Automobile Theft Prevention Authority. At issue, the Department of Public Safety, the Colorado Automobile Theft Prevention Authority is providing a grant to the city to assist in preventing thefts of catalytic converters. In 2023, the Colorado Automobile Theft Prevention Authority awarded Wheat Ridge Police Department $18,584 to be used to mark and register catalytic converters. Consent Agenda Item 1C, Resolution Number 13-2023, a resolution amending the 2023 fiscal year general fund budget to reflect the approval of a supplemental budget appropriation in the amount of $84,382 for the purpose of accepting a grant from the Colorado Division of Criminal Justice Fentanyl Accountability and Prevention Grant Program. At issue, the Colorado Division of Justice, DOJ, awards police departments grant funds to be used for law enforcement purposes. In 2023, the DOJ, as part of the Fentanyl Accountability and Prevention Grant Program, awarded the Wheat Ridge Police Department $84,382 to be used for supplies, technology, and travel for the purpose of investigating deaths and injury caused by illegal synthetic opiate poisoning and disrupting synthetic opioid supplies. Consent Agenda Item 1D, Resolution Number 14-2023, a resolution amending the 2023 fiscal year general fund budget to reflect the approval of a supplemental budget appropriation in the amount of $66,296 for the purpose of awarding a contract in the amount of $162,295.31 and approving subsequent payments to Terrace Associates, LLC for right-of-way maintenance services. At issue, this request is for approval of the annual right-of-way maintenance service contract. The city currently contracts annually for mowing, weed prevention and mitigation, and trash pickup in various right-of-way areas. TerraCare was selected by the review team at the conclusion of a formal bid process for a contract in the not-to-exceed amount of $162,295.31. Only $96,000 was included in the 2023 budget. Therefore, a supplemental budget appropriation in the amount of $66,296 is required. Consent Agenda Item 1E, Resolution Number 15-2023, a resolution amending the 2023 fiscal year public art fund budget to reflect the approval of the supplemental budget appropriation in the amount of $8,000 for the purpose of awarding a contract in the amount of $475,000 and approving subsequent payments to Core 4 Studios for Wadsworth Public Art. At issue, utilizing the process defined in the Public Art Management Plan, Council approved the selection of Core 4 Studios, formerly known as JCAS Studios, for the public art associated with the Improved Wadsworth project in November 2022. This resolution will award a contract to Core 4 Studios, appropriate an additional $8,000 from the Public Art Fund required to fund the $475,000 contract. Consent Agenda Item 1F, Resolution Number 16-2023, a resolution authorizing community financial support as a match for a transportation alternates program grant application for improvements to the Clear Creek Trail. At issue, the Transportation Alternates Program, TAP, provides funding through CDOT for local transportation alternatives to driving at 80% of the project cost. The Parks and Recreation Department proposes to apply this program for concrete replacement throughout segments of the Clear Creek Trail to improve the trail to the 10-foot wide standard, add crusher fine shoulders where feasible, and add a creekside park/Marshall Street connection. Consent Agenda Item 1G, Resolution Number 17-2023, a resolution approving a contract with the Colorado Department of Transportation for maintenance of traffic signals. At issue, 3 traffic signals at the I-70 32nd Avenue interchange are owned by the Colorado Department of Transportation. CDOT and the city have previously entered into 5-year agreements for the city to operate and maintain these signals. The current agreement expires on June 30th, 2023. The city will be compensated annually by CDOT for the maintenance activities. Consent agenda item 1H. Motion approving an amendment to the temporary site lease agreement with T-Mobile West LLC. At issue in June of 2022, City Council approved a lease agreement and a temporary site agreement with T-Mobile West LLC. In January of 2023, staff returned to council to update the commencement date on the lease agreement due to supply chain issues. The same date also needs to be adjusted in the temporary site lease agreement. We are requesting a motion to make that simple date adjustment. Consent agenda item 1I, motion approving an amendment to the temporary site lease agreement with Verizon Wireless. The
This is
same
the
at
same.
issue. Consent agenda item 1J, resolution number 18-2023, a resolution approving intergovernmental agreements with Jefferson County concerning ballot box use at Wheat Ridge City Hall, Anderson Park, and Prospect Park. At issue, the city of Wheat Ridge has 3 Jefferson County ballot box locations on city property: Wheat Ridge City Hall, Anderson Park, and Prospect Park. These locations provide convenient locations for residents to drop off completed ballots. The city has an intergovernmental agreement, IGA, in place with Jefferson County for each location. This request for approval includes a new IGA for the City Hall location and amendments to the existing IGAs for Anderson Park and Prospect Park. Consent agenda item 1K, resolution number 19-2023, a resolution amending the fiscal year 2023 general fund budget to reflect approval of a supplemental budget appropriation in the amount of $8,766 to fund the safety program. At issue, the city recently received an unexpected dividend refund from the city's workers' compensation insurance provider, Pinnacle Assurance, in the amount of $8,766. In 2023, the city hired its first risk management coordinator, and that employee is increasing the safety committee programming and providing a much more robust overall risk management program. To fund some of the new activities, staff would like to offset expenses with the Pinnacle Assurance dividend and put those funds to good use through increased risk management programming.
Thank you very much. Well done. Catch your breath, and then may I have a motion on agenda item number 1A through K?
I move to approve consent agenda items 1A through K.
Second.
Second.
I think we have a second by Councilor Ohm. Would the clerk please poll the council?
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you very much. We will move now to agenda item number 2. Councilor Weaver, would you please introduce this item?
Thank you, Mayor. This is Council Bill number 07-2023, an ordinance approving the rezoning of property located at 7890 West 38th Avenue from residential 2 or R2 to mixed-use neighborhood MU-N. This is case number WZ-23-01. The applicant is requesting the approval of a zone change from R2 to mixed-use neighborhood for a property located at 7890 West 38th Avenue. The zone change will result in a zoning that allows for neighborhood-serving uses and provides a transitional buffer between the existing residential uses and the commercial uses.
Thank you. This is an ordinance on first reading to set the date, time, and location for a public hearing. This is a quasi-judicial case. May I have a motion on this item?
Yes, you may. Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve Council Bill number 07-2023, an ordinance approving the rezoning of property located at 7890 West 38th Avenue from residential 2 or R2 to mixed-use neighborhood MUN on first reading, order it published, public hearing set for Monday, May 8th, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. as a virtual meeting and in City Council chambers, and that it take effect 15 days after final publication.
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Councilor Hoppe. Would the clerk please poll the council? Thank you. We will go to agenda item number 3. Councilor Nosler-Beck, would you please introduce this item?
Thanks, Mayor. Motion to award the 2023 bridge repair project on Youngfield Street over Clear Creek to TechCon Infrastructure LLC of Denver, Colorado, and approve subsequent payments in the amount of $469,911 with a contingency amount of $46,991 for a total not to exceed the amount of $516,902. At issue, the 2023 bridge repair project will perform critical maintenance to the Youngfield Bridge over Clear Creek. This work will not modify the structure or add any features such as sidewalks. 4 bids were received for this work in response to an invitation to bid. Staff recommends awarding a contract to the lowest responsive bidder, TechCon Infrastructure LLC of Denver, Colorado, in the amount of $469,911. There was a missing number. $469,911 plus a staff managed. Did somebody say something? Oh, okay. Plus a staff managed contingency of $46,991 for a total not to exceed amount of $516,902.
Thank you. This will be a motion by the council. It is not quasi-judicial. Mr. Goff, do we have a staff presentation on this item?
No presentation, but Maria DeAndrea is here, and is Whitney's gone too, or purchasing, is Whitney left? No, it's fine. Maria's here if you have any questions, our Public Works Director.
Okay, thank you very much. Before we go to questions from council, I would like to open this up to the public. If you would like to speak on this item, number 3, this is your opportunity. I have no one signed up to speak, but if you're here and would like to speak, you may do so by coming to the podium, and if you're joining us online, you may raise your hand, and we will bring you into the meeting.
Mr. Mayor, there is no one online.
Okay, thank you very much, and I don't see anybody coming forward to speak from the hall chambers, so I will open this up to questions from council. Any questions from council before I ask for a motion? Seeing none, Councilor Nasser-Lebeck, may I have a motion on this item?
I move to award the 2023 bridge repair project and approve subsequent payments to TechCon Infrastructure LLC in the amount of $469,911 with a contingency amount of $46,911 for a total not to exceed the amount of $516,902.
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Mayor Pro Tem Stites. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, will the clerk please poll the council?
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. This will bring us to agenda item number 4. Mayor Pro Tem Stites, would you please introduce this item?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Resolution number 20-2023, a resolution in opposition to statewide land use and zoning preemptions in Senate Bill 23-213, unless amended to address local concerns. At issue, the state of Colorado has committed both in statute and in state constitution to the local control of land use planning and zoning because local governments are closest to the land and to the people that occupy it. Senate Bill 23-213 would place statewide mandates on local land use and matters and substitute the judgment of legislators and state regulators who lack the understanding needed to make the right decisions for Wheat Ridge. SB 23-213 will undermine long-range planning efforts and will severely limit the city's ability to maintain reasonable zoning regulations to ensure a high quality of life and sound economic environment for our current and future residents, workers, and business owners. Wheat Ridge supports efforts to address housing affordability and has already implemented many of the concepts advanced in the bill, including accessory dwelling units, transit-oriented development, and increased densities on commercial corridors. In addition, the city adopted an affordable housing strategy and action plan on January 9th, 2023. As a guiding document to address housing affordability in Wheat Ridge. As recommended in this plan, the city has created a housing fund with a dedicated revenue source to preserve affordable housing units in Wheat Ridge. SB 23-213 needs significant revisions so that there are safeguards to ensure that increases in housing supply adequately address the issues of affordability. Wheat Ridge is committed to working with the governor's office, the legislature, the counties and other communities to formulate solutions that address the issues in a comprehensive, reasonable, and fair manner. We oppose SB 23-213 until it is amended to address these concerns.
Thank you. This will be a resolution of the council. Mr. Goff, do we have a staff presentation on this one?
No staff presentation, but this issue was brought up last Monday night by Mayor Starker. As you all know, this bill, I believe you know, the bill was heard in committee this last Thursday, and Mayor Starker was there, so he may have some updates to provide to the council and the public on what happened and what didn't happen. But Colorado Municipal League, who provides services for all municipalities across the city, does recommend that we oppose this bill unless amended, and ask that we do reach out to our legislatures to ask them to make changes that would better represent our communities. So with that, I'll leave it to you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. Before we go to questions of council or discussion, let us open it up to the public to speak on this issue. This has generated a lot of, I want to say enthusiasm, but certainly a lot of notice amongst the public. So if you would like to speak on this issue, you may do so now. I don't have anyone signed up to speak here in City Council chambers, but if you're here and haven't signed up, you may come to the podium and speak now. And if you would like to speak and are joining us online, you may raise your hand, and we're happy to bring you into the meeting. And I'll ask
No one, Mayor.
Clerk, no one is raising their hands to speak, so we will open this up for questions or comments from council. Mayor Pro Tem Stites.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I guess my question would be for you. What happened Friday? Anything?
You know, I attended the opening session when this was heard in committee hearing, I believe in the local government committee of the Senate, held in the old Supreme Court chambers, because there were it was full, a lot of people there, and there were arguments for and against this piece of legislation. The CML and other mayors spoke in opposition of it. We had the sponsors and many of their supporters speaking on it. I'll say that I think this piece of legislation, as it was originally introduced, has a number of sort of problematic components that we looked at. One of the most significant is that it would make the state the primary governing authority on sort of many of the local zoning matters that we take as local issues now. They would mandate greater densities in R1 neighborhoods, mandating that in any residential lot, a structure up to, I believe, a sixplex would be allowed to be built by right in any residential zone lot. They would not have any requirements for the number of unrelated parties that could occupy a residential structure. Let's see, what were some of the other? I don't have all my notes. They would, some of the things in the bill, I think we're sort of moving in a direction that we've been moving in with our own action plan. Density along the main transit corridors, where we have the G line and rail coming into a transit-oriented development would be greater density. I think we look at that. It speaks to ADUs as a use by right, and our plan has adopted ADUs as a function in our community. I think one of the things that really sort of gets to me the most is that we, over the last year or two, the state has provided funding and encouraged communities to seek funding to support affordable housing strategies and studies that look at your community and look at various ways that we can support and enhance affordable residential development and residential properties in our community. And it's a little bit disconcerting to sort of get to go through an 8 or 9 month process with our citizens, where we gathered a lot of research and feedback from them and presented a plan, and then in the next session of the legislature they come and say, well, we want the state to create a housing plan and that's the plan that we will mandate that cities throughout the state that are selected, and these are Tier 1 cities primarily, which are urban areas throughout the kind of the Denver metropolitan area. It doesn't affect anything, exempts the counties from any of these regulations. It has some special regulations for the resort communities, selected resort communities, but then the rest of the state is sort of not under these regulations. A little disconcerting that the counties, the metropolitan counties, which have a lot of land that are available, are totally exempted from this zoning ordinance. So, you know, I think there's some things that are good in the bill, but I think unless they really do some major surgery and major amendments to it, that this is not a good way to you know, to go about creating community in our city. So that's not a brief presentation, but a little bit more extensive. But I'm happy to sort of answer any questions. I'm not an expert on this. Councilor Nosler-Beck.
I have just been trying to figure out what some of the engagement with local governments was with the formation of this legislation. And I've been told that there are amendments coming that include some of our feedback. And I haven't been able to see what any of those amendments are. I had read an article about some of the resort towns being exempt, and that was an addition potentially. But did you hear anything about amendments that they were planning to bring or anything like
I have heard that there may be a list of some amendments that they are planning or considering, but I have not seen that list. And I'm not sure when that, you know, what the next step in the legislative process is. But one would hope that if they've got amendments that they're considering, that they'll put those out there. We, you know, I sit on the executive committee of the Metro Mayor's Caucus, and we've sort of heard this piece of legislation was coming, you know, sort of for several months since the session was starting in January. It was really only the sort of 3 or 4 days before the bill was introduced into the Senate that we got sort of a quick sit down with the governor's staff and a look at the legislation. So we haven't had a lot of opportunity to sort of look at the detail language in it, and it's 105 pages on the bill, so it's a pretty lengthy bill. Sets up the Department of Local Affairs to be sort of a superior sort of planning and zoning organization at the state level to sort of develop plans and then have cities either adopt that plan or make their plan conform to that plan. So I know that they talked about amendments coming out at the hearing on Thursday, so we'll probably just need to see. That's, I think, one of the reasons why we've brought this ordinance forward with an oppose unless amended position, so that we're able to stay at the table. We'd love to work with the sponsors and the governor's staff to craft a piece of legislation that does truly make housing affordable. This piece of legislation doesn't make any dedicated housing affordable. It says, well, if you make housing denser, if you're able to densify zoning within the land areas in your communities, that you know, developers will build more housing, and therefore it will be affordable because there'll be more of it. You know, I think when I look out at the amount of building that we've done in Wheat Ridge over the past 5 to 10 years, we've sort of put together a lot of units, at least relative to what we've done in the last 30 years, and you know, I can't see that affordability has been an outcome of that process. So there's sort of no guarantee that it's really more of a densification plan than a necessarily affordable plan. Councilor Hoppe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I just would like to point out in the resolution that we're considering tonight, it does very clearly say that that we oppose it unless amended. And the amendments haven't come out yet, so we wouldn't, if we were supporting this, we wouldn't really necessarily be jumping the gun because the amendments haven't come out. I also turned in written statement, which I would like to read. However, I'll wait until after the motion's made during the discussion time for that.
Okay. Anything, anything further from staff? And
No, not much, Mayor. Just maybe to respond to Councilmember Nasser-Beck's question a little bit, or comment. Our staff was able to meet also with the governor's office, Lauren Mikulak, our community development director, but I think it was like a week before the bill was introduced. And from what she has told me and what she heard at the meeting, there was others from other metropolitan cities there also in the same role as her. None of the suggestions that were brought up were included in this current bill. So at least at that time, it'd be great, yeah, if they are going to consider that in amendments. But I think the outreach was very lacking to local governments. So as the mayor said, I think our main concern as a city from staff level is that this does not do anything to guarantee or require affordable housing. And what it does to our local single unit zoning in our community. I think we all understand how important single-family zoning is for this community specifically. That's why I think this bill is a statewide mandate that is a kind of a one solution for all. Every community is different. Wheat Ridge does support it, single-family zoning quite heavily, and I don't think our community would support this at all if they had to have a sixplex in their single-family zoning area. So that's our main concerns with the bill.
okay. Thank you. Councilor Nasser-Beck.
Can we just ask that, because the state legislature will be done here in early May, just as this progresses, I think week by week, if we could just get an update on any amendments, that would be really helpful so that we can follow through on tracking this.
I think that's great. If we get to a position where we're able to, that our feelings on this change, I think we should be ready and flexible enough to be able to address the situation. I think we're nimble in that regard. Mayor Pro Tem Stipes, may I have a motion on this?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to approve resolution number 20-2023, a resolution in opposition to statewide land use and zoning preemptions in Senate Bill 23-213, unless amended to address local concerns.
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Councilor Weaver. Hutchinson, pardon me. Is there a discussion on the motion? Councilor Nasser-Beck.
I'm going to be voting to support Wheat Ridge opposing this legislation, and I just wanted to be on the record sharing that I think it's just almost negligent of the Department of Local Affairs and the governor's office to not take into consideration all of the work that our community's been doing up to this point to help solve this crisis, municipality by municipality. I don't see any of us in this legislation, and that's just really disappointing. Something that I really appreciated about this legislation that is a bummer that because we didn't get that outreach and engagement early on is the need for an unmet needs assessment around the state of Colorado so that we can, as a state, tackle affordability both with the federal government and with the state budget. It's just very disappointing that that is not going to probably make it through with the support of our community, and we're not being heard in that. I will be talking to our state legislators and anybody who will listen to me about how important that work is to push forward, but just wanted to get on the record about why I am supporting our position tonight on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional discussion? Councilor Rome.
Thank you, Mayor. I would join in. I am in favor of opposing this bill. I feel like our community has gone a long ways towards affordable housing. We've you know, the city has gone to great lengths with our staff. I support our staff and you know, the inroads that we've made with our consultants and trying to tackle this affordable housing issue. And this is not in favor of everything that we work so hard to do and what our constituents, what they've asked us to do. They are supportive of affordable housing, but I agree with what the mayor has said, my fellow council member have said, and staff has said, that we need to oppose this and unless it's amended. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Stites.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't think I'm going to say anything new. Wheat Ridge is a home rule city, and that shouldn't change based on this. I think that this is overstepped quite a bit on what home rule cities are meant to do, and counties and everything else. This doesn't address the problem. It just creates a solution that is supposed to be one size fits all, and one size fits all very rarely works. So I'm also in favor of us opposing this until it's amended, and I do hope that they'll come to the table and sit down and talk with us, and sit down and talk with CML and some of the other cities out there, because Wheat Ridge is not the same as Arvada, not the same as Denver, not the same as Lakewood, not the same as obviously the ski communities, which apparently the resort communities can get an exemption, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me either, because there's a lot of land up there, and if you want to tackle affordable housing, that might be a place to put it. But we've been making our inroads here in the city, and we've been working with our community and doing all we can to reach out to our neighbors and our community members and trying to find a solution here that works, and I hope that our state legislators will do the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Hobby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Last Wednesday, after reading the entire 105 pages of SB 23-213, I turned in my written comments, and I'm going to read to you what they were. Thank you for the opportunity to enter written comment on SB 23-213. I agree that we are facing a crisis in attainable housing at an affordable price. I also agree with many points made in the bill about middle housing, which needs to increase to move the needle on affordability and creating a move-up market for home ownership. However, I do not think that a sweeping top-down zoning requirement with little to no local control is the appropriate avenue for the solution. I'm an elected city council representative for the city of Wheat Ridge, and we have made steps towards resolving our affordable housing crisis in our community. We have had an affordable housing study completed that has resulted in the adoption of an affordable housing plan and have identified ongoing financial resource to fund it. In our study, we found that we have a lack of housing in the 80% or higher AMI, but a surplus in the 60% and lower. The issue within the 60% AMI and lower is that the living conditions are undesirable, old, outdated, and lack amenities. Part of our plan is to work with private owners to update and upgrade properties to make them more desirable, while also preserving them as affordable. SB 23-213 does not make accommodations for communities that are already doing the work that has been identified as specific to the actual community. SB 23-213 also does not allow for balance of community character that is existing, a character that can change from block to block. We in Wheat Ridge have identified areas where density is appropriate sizing, such as our commercial corridors. Our commercial corridors are appropriate areas for right-sizing multifamily density and middle housing. As the bill stands now, there is no guarantee that middle housing allowed and built in a patchwork style and single detached community will actually be affordable. If there were a requirement that any middle housing built in a single-family detached lot must be affordable, then the outcome would match the desire of the bill. Also, there is only one reference to an actual AMI percentage, and that in the entire 105 pages. One reference, and that is in the transit-oriented section. Additionally, it only references 80% AMI. There's no plan to address lower than 80% and no definition of AMI, which should not be based at a state level, rather a local and regional level. SB 23-213 speaks to the extent about middle housing being a bridge for affordable home ownership. However, it does nothing to extend legal protections to developers to encourage them to regain momentum in building condos. Condos were a starting block for home ownership, creating a move-up market and a move-down opportunity. With the lack of condos in our housing stock, we have completely cut that building block out. I would also like to point out that while the bill does address short-term rentals in the sense that local governments can choose to regulate, it does not require regulation of short-term rentals. An oversaturation of short-term rentals in any community can also negatively affect ability of homes and long-term rentals on the market. an example from my community in Wheat Ridge, in which we found we had a concentration of short-term rentals in one district, and that many of them were owned by corporations such as Expedia. With the knowledge of oversaturation of short-term rentals primarily owned by out-of-state corporate interests contributed to the lack of affordable housing, we decided to address it within our short-term rental regulations. We limit the number of short-term rentals any person or corporation can own and put a 2% cap on allowed licenses. In my opinion, the lack of short-term regulations is not compatible with the issues SB 23-213 is trying to resolve and should be addressed. I appreciate your time. Judy Soppy.
Thank you, Councilman. Good letter. Any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, will the clerk please poll the council?
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you very much. Okay, that concludes our business agenda items. Let me get back to my agenda. And we will go to City Manager's Matters. Mr. Goff.
I'll defer to after the study session. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. City Attorney's Matters, we have, I believe, our City Attorney on Zoom with us.
Yes, I'm here, and thank you for allowing me to Zoom in. I would prefer to be there in person, and I will be next meeting, but I don't have anything at this time. Thank you.
Okay, we appreciate you joining us virtually. Look forward to seeing you and travel safely.
Thank you.
Elected Officials Matters. Mr. Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. There's two things I want to bring up. One was I got a complaint from one of my constituents about the gun shooting range in Wheat Ridge, and I know this is in my district, so north of 38th, and I know within the past year there's been several south of 38th. So this is north 38th and south of 38th, yeah, so from the same business. And so I understand that there's a section 16-103 unreasonable noise disturbing the peace, and it appears that I know there's this, I think there's possibly a 65 decibel level, but it appears that these might be in violation of that, of having that noise go beyond the property and into the private residences that they can hear it. And so I just want to kind of ask staff to please look into this. It's really unnerving and disturbing when somebody's at their house and they're hearing gunshots going off, and it's kind of jarring. So anything that that we can do to try to help the business to comply with that would be appreciated. And then the second thing I have is in my neighborhood there are several sidewalks that have now heaved. They're probably, I'm not going to say how much, but they're far beyond just a little of the shaving, a grinding of the sidewalk, and so they create tripping hazards. And I'd like to know if maybe we could have like a study session down the road to address some of these broken sidewalks, and then also ask our city attorney, like, whose responsibility is it to repair the city sidewalks, and do we have a budget for that?
Don't see our city attorney on
Looks
right
like we may
now.
have- Did he fall off, Valley? Jerry, are you still there? Well, if he pops back on, we'll get him to respond maybe. If
Okay.
you want to move on.
Okay. Councilor Noslerbeck.
Thanks. Just a couple of announcements. Wilmore Davis is having their Out with the Bang big celebration on May 10th from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. And this will just be a celebration of the school and the alumni. And so Wilmore Davis was opened in 1955, and it'll be closing in May 2023. My dad and my uncle are going to be attending as alumni. My uncle was in the first class of, of Wilmore Davis. So you can get a T-shirt. You can buy a T-shirt for $10, and they're letting people, I think, take home their maybe favorite chair or something. And then also the Wheat Ridge Piranhas, our community swim team has started their spring training. And so the community is invited to join us if you're interested in either supporting the Wheat Ridge Piranhas or have a swimmer that is under the age of 18 to swim with us. Our spring training is on Sunday afternoons. You can visit the website, and then we start practice for the summer season May 20th. So thanks very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Additional elected officials matters. Councilor Weaver. Bless you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Does anybody else want to go before me?
Okay.
I'll help you.
Councilor Hutchinson, if you're going to.
I think everybody remembers 9 Health Fair. It's got a new name now. It's called 365. And I got a little brochure in the mail. It's a wonderful place to go. Very low cost lab draws. You talk with medical professionals and you can get your vitals done, a lot of information. What I see is the closest one around would be Arvada Covenant Church. This is April 22nd on a Saturday. And the hours are like 7 in the morning till 11:30. But they suggest, you know, you never know if something's going to change. So they do have a website, which is www.healthfairs.org to look it up. And it's really, a lot of people end up going to them, and it's very economical, especially people who don't have insurance. So it's really a good thing.
Good.
Thank you.
Great to be able to have medical care whenever you can get it, and affordable is even better. So thanks for bringing that forward. Councilor Weaver, how you doing?
I'm doing okay, thank you.
Okay, good.
Sorry about
Continue.
that. I just wanted to acknowledge some of the proclamations that were made at the beginning of the night tonight. I have had a lot of experience with animal control as well as with the victim advocacy, because you might all remember that several years ago I had an incident with some goats, and we don't think about. I happen to follow some of the posts of animal control for Wheat Ridge, and there have just been some amazing stories of what the group at Community Services and Animal Control has been doing, to the point that it has come to tears of some of the amazing situations they've saved animals from, and really dealing with animal cruelty. And I just know it's an issue that's close to everyone's heart here in Wheat Ridge, is their pet families. And so I just want to say kudos to the community service officers and the animal control officers. But also, one thing that I didn't realize is when I was involved with a crime with animals, that victim services is for that too, because I didn't really think of myself as a victim since it had to do with animals, but that was just a real realization, and helped me make the connection of how that all works together for people, that it's not just the crime and figuring out the crime, but it's the victim part of that, and the healing, and there's a lot of happy and connected stories that sort of come out the end of a lot of this stuff. So thanks, Chief, and just kudos to everybody in the police department. You're doing great. Thanks.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Stites.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Speaking of the proclamations earlier, they talked a little bit about the Sustainable Neighborhood Program, and I wanted to give a shout out to the Applewood Sustainable Neighborhood Program. They not only work on environmental issues, and I guess kind of indirectly, but during the pandemic, our neighborhood had food trucks every single Saturday coming in, and the neighbors would get together and get a chance to see each other in kind of a safe way, but we didn't have to leave and go to restaurants. Our Sustainable Applewood Neighborhood Group in the last couple weeks did a really, really cool, really awesome Easter egg hunt last weekend down at Lewis Meadows Park. It was really cool. I didn't get a chance to go. My daughter was sick, but they have done a phenomenal job in our area. So I know that they're looking for more sustainable neighborhood groups. So don't let Paramount Heights and Applewood be the only cool ones in the city. Make sure you guys get out and apply. Thank you. Oh, and if you can find it, you should buy it in Wheat Ridge.
Okay, thank you. Any further elected officials matters? I would like to really congratulate our Parks Department and the city staff that really put on a terrific Easter egg hunt. Let's see, the week before Easter over at Anderson Park. I'll tell you, we had, there must have been 1,000 or 2,000 little kids over there. They were cuter than anything and really had a great time. So I want to thank all the parks personnel and city staff that worked really hard to put that together. It was a great event. I want to thank all the parents and grandparents for bringing out their kids and grandkids, and because they were all having a great day. It was a great morning. So thank you for doing that. That's what life in a small town is supposed to be. So thank you all for doing that. If there's any more things before our council, if not, we will stand adjourned. We're going to adjourn to a city council study session. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. I'd like to call to order the special study session for the City Council for the City of Wheat Ridge, Colorado for April 10, 2023. We have two action items or agenda items on this. Number one is the Drug Paraphernalia Offenses Code Amendments, and item number two is the Weapons Offenses Code Amendments. We have taken public comment on these items prior to the meeting. So we will start with item number one is Drug Paraphernalia Offenses Code Amendments. And Mr. Goff, do we have a presentation on this, staff presentation on this item?
We do. Mr. Dahl is online for this. The first item was brought up recently to our attention with some inconsistencies in our code and how our court was enforcing our code and even how our police department, I think, was enforcing it. And we had our city attorney's office look into this, and they have some recommendations for some changes. So I will turn it over to Mr. Dahl.
Mr. Dahl. You may be on mute.
Sorry, folks. Sorry.
Yep, we hear you loud and clear.
That's why I'd rather be there in person. If the chief is still in the room, he may be able to help me on this or be able to answer additional questions if you have them. But you have a memorandum from our office in your packets that also accompanies, I believe, a draft ordinance that, if there's a consensus, we'll be bringing forward for first reading. As mentioned in the memo, there's two provisions in state law that provide immunity from prosecution for certain drug matters. One is an immunity for possession, sale of drug paraphernalia, not merely syringes, but other items, including spoons and pen casings, etc., that are used outside of the syringe context for the delivery of other drugs. And then there's secondly an immunity from the possession of an injection device, so a syringe, if it's found by law enforcement during a search when the person alerts the officer to the presence of that device. And that alerting can take place either by the individual voluntarily saying before a search, I'm letting you know I have a syringe in my possession, or on my person, or if the officer asks and the person volunteers that. Both kinds of activities are presently immune from prosecution under state law. However, we've received a fair amount of feedback from the judge in this case and the police department that a distinction really can be made, and the Wheat Ridge is a home rule municipality, so it was allowed to divert from state law in this case. And while the immunity for the possession of injection devices continues, we believe, to be a proper immunity from prosecution. Not so the immunity from the possession sale of drug paraphernalia of all types. And that's the distinction that would be made in the bill that would be brought forward to the council for its action on first reading. The distinction there being, as articulated by the judge and by the police department, is that for the syringes, there is a program. It is supportive of that program for a clean syringe program and a clean syringe exchange program to continue to provide the immunity, but not so the other paraphernalia, which leads to, from what the judge has seen, the support of addiction in other ways. And there's issues that the municipal court has seen with business owners, et cetera, with the ability of that particular kind of paraphernalia to cause issues for businesses and homeowners in terms of where those activities are taking place. And the desire on behalf of the municipal court and police department is to be able to continue to prosecute those offenses. And I recognize that makes a distinction that was pointed out by the speaker earlier. And it's a public policy distinction that obviously only the council can in the end make. But the recommendation you're getting from the staff is to preserve the immunity for the drug injection devices, syringes, but not preserve the immunity that's allowed in state law, but you have the local authority to override that for the other kinds of drug paraphernalia. Chief, is there anything more that you'd like to add from the department's perspective?
Before the chief goes too, I just want to give a little bit more background and context on this. The reason we brought this forward was because in 2019, we brought this in front of council to amend the code to, as Mr. Dahl said, decriminalize persons who have injection devices only. And we believe there was probably an oversight that the other section of the code did not get amended at that time to outlaw other drug paraphernalia in addition to needles and syringes. But the ordinance was very specific in 2019 that this was just pertaining to needles and syringes, no other drug paraphernalia.
Thank you. Patrick, from the police department perspective, obviously we have a crisis, a national crisis, but that crisis also extends here to Wheat Ridge. The fentanyl problems, the addiction problems, the drug problems are certainly a cornerstone issue for the police department and can tend to lead to a lot of other issues. Drug use does not necessarily mean that somebody will continue criminal behavior in the community, but it often does. We are certainly hearing from the public on a weekly basis, and on a daily basis, I see in our reports of interactions with folks who are either dealing fentanyl or using fentanyl on almost a daily basis. Some of the issues we run into and why we're in support of this particular amendment are the fact that we often don't catch people in the middle of using the drugs. It's often post-use, and it's often reported to us by citizens or our residents of the community. And when we get there, we have little enforcement action without the paraphernalia interaction that we have, because we know these folks are using it, and often they won't stop using it unless there's a reason to. And that reason, I think the judge would agree, is to bring them in front of a court where they can be compelled to get help. We heard earlier from people who provide that help, but I'm here to tell you that the number of people that we run into is tenfold what they're talking about, maybe more on a daily basis. So we also find a secondary reason that some folks have taken advantage of this needle program to hide their other activities. So using the clean syringe exchange program and knowing that almost absolves them of any other paraphernalia charges has become known in the drug use community that we interact with. Additionally, from personal interaction and from what I hear from the officers, there's not a change in behavior, a harm reduction change necessarily based on the law that we have that's generally just a product of what's available for drug users. In my conversations and in the conversations we've had with people who have been addicted and been able to beat that addiction, the only thing that can compel them to stop is either a judge or being incarcerated. That doesn't mean that drugs are necessarily always an incarcerable offense, nor should they. But right now, with the crisis we have too many instances where we are using our own drug interdiction efforts to save lives. We have far too many resources going to it, and we have far too many complaints from our community about the activities in and around drugs. We pride ourselves on really our mantra, which is compassion with boundaries. We go out there and we'll connect people to help. But unless they're forced to, unless they're brought before Judge Randall and told that they need to do something, generally they won't. That's our experience, that's my experience, and that is not just for the current epidemic of fentanyl, but for whatever comes after it and beyond. So these changes will be made with an eye towards the future, I hope, to the fact that we don't know what's coming in the pipeline, but synthetic opioids, synthetic drugs are the wave of the future. They're cheap, they're highly addictive, and they are a menace to our society in many ways that we know about and some that you don't often hear about. So while we want to be compassionate, we want these folks to get help, it's a tsunami of activity. So I ask you to please support the officers and their ability to interdict these folks and try and connect them to services and help through the judge and through the programs that we support. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Chief, and thank you, Mr. Dahl. Are there questions of council? Councilor Hoppe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I appreciate the legal approach to make sure that our code is clear in both ways, and I appreciate your comments, Chief. I also appreciate Maxwell Miranda speaking to us earlier, because when I first read this, I was like, this is kind of a no-brainer, but they also brought up some different points to consider, which also made me wonder, where are our peer communities with this? Where are the harm reduction centers? We know where this particular one stands. We also have Jefferson Center for Mental Health in our community, and they do emergency services there on Wadsworth. And then just kind of like what the potential extent is. What we have in front of us is a legal memo that tells us how we can legally do this, but I personally don't feel like I have enough in-depth information to support this tonight. I would absolutely support it coming back another night if a consensus isn't obtained.
Thank you. Additional discussion around this item. Stuff item. Councilor Nosler-Beck.
I think I'm landing in the same spot that Councilor Hoppe is on this. I too was reviewing this over the weekend and just thought that it really looked like a no-brainer, as you said. And I guess I want to make sure that we are looking at this from a regional perspective, because I think we have to address all of this that way. And so I'd like to, I guess, learn more about other communities and how they're dealing with this in our neighboring areas.
I had a question for the chief. Chief, I'm not really familiar with what other drug paraphernalia, what other items are illegal. Marijuana is legal in a lot of instances in our state, and are rolling papers part of the paraphernalia, and are they legal? And what's the distinction between the?
Yeah, if we determine that there's a use, and it could be just aluminum foil, which is often used to heat up drugs and to use in the use of drugs. It could be glass pipes with meth residue in it. Methamphetamines are still the #1 drug, even though we hear a lot about fentanyl. Fentanyl is quickly closing the gap to become the number one drug, but the different types of instruments that could be used for that, which could be, often it's a Brillo pad that's used as a filtration device, or other types of sort of organic methods of either smoking or ingesting these different types of drugs. So our officers are very skilled in that. We take a lot of evidence in, but often we get a call from people who are familiar who say, I see used tinfoil, burnt tinfoil on the street, and they know that that's drug use. And we collect that as evidence, and we find that in vehicles. So we really don't do a lot with marijuana, with rolling papers, but if it's used to utilize these other drugs, certainly we use that as a way to have a conversation with somebody, and maybe more in those instances.
Okay, thank you very much. Additional questions or discussion on this item? Councilor Hoppy.
Because there's no additional questions or anybody else requesting additional discussion, I was wondering if I could try to find a consensus to move this to a different study session with some more information about regionally and some outreach to our harm reduction centers, and just get some more information on it in general, and then have it come back to us.
Okay, we have a request for consensus about.
Yeah, can we have maybe a little bit more discussion about more information in general, just so that we're prepared?
Okay. Yeah, let's.
If there's others that have maybe comments on it, or
some questions on that. So, do you want to elaborate? I know Councilor Nasser Beck, is that you sort of were thinking along those lines?
Yeah, I would just like to also hear from what they're doing in Lakewood and Arvada, even Edgewater, in just their take on this, but also I do think it would be really great if we could do some outreach to Jefferson Center to just see what data they have, to show, this is all in an effort to reduce harm to folks in our community on all sides of the issue, and so just to also have some additional data to show us.
Councilor Weaver?
I would also appreciate more data on the officer side and sort of what that looks like for those interactions, because I'm hearing and understanding, but I just don't know enough about the intricacies of to the point of different drugs and different methods, and because I also want to be very conscious of listening to our own officers and what they're going through in these situations, because I think that's also the balance of understanding what's happening regionally, but I'd also like to know what these local interactions look like, so that story can be told too, of it just seems like dangerous for everybody on both sides. So having that more data on what it looks and feels like on an interaction basis, I think would help me anyway too.
Additional discussion? Councilor Hutchinson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd be very interested in what the success stories are of people who have been addicted, because we don't have that many places for people to go. And so the deal to where, okay, here's a transfer, get on a bus and go over to this place and get some counseling or whatever, I don't see how that works. I really don't. It seems like it needs to be in-house kind of treatment. And then what? Because I just heard on TV there's a new drug now that's going along with fentanyl. I think it's xylazine, okay? It's not an opioid, but also, and I'm not sure if this is correct, when that's with fentanyl, then Narcan doesn't work. So it's just like a ball going down the street to where somewhere along the line, we got to figure out, how do we handle this, you know? Even though there is syringe exchanges, you can get a clean syringe for a dirty or whatever. There are syringes all over the place, you know? And people who clean up areas and things like that, that's a danger for them to step on a syringe. So, you know, I support, the police are the ones who are going out there because a lot of times they get the calls from the public. Something's not right. And also a lot of crime is committed when people are on the drugs. So there just needs to be like more answers. It's not cut and dried, but we're not solving anything. It's getting worse. That's what I think. And, you know, been around when it was LSD and cocaine and all this kind of stuff, and even pot and all that. You have to have some type of consequence when you step over and you're affecting the public, you know. So I don't know what the answer is, but I don't see us doing very much about it, and I think we do need to have consequences, you know, for people being out there on drugs. I mean, we do we used to, if they were driving drunk. Now you get like 3 chances or something. But there has to be consequences for that. We have to protect the public for the people who are not doing the drugs. And I don't know what the answers are. But I think it's deeper than just, you know, surface kinds of things. We need places for these people to go and get treatment. And then after they get treatment, then what happens? Do they get jobs? What do they do? Have a success story. Come and talk to us about what they went through or whatever, because I don't know. We've gotten rid of all the places where people would go for treatment for a while. And, you know, I don't know, it's addiction. So
Yeah.
I don't know how you figure that out.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Councilor Hutchinson. It seems like we've got a consensus going to maybe bring this back to another study session, have perhaps a little bit more rounded discussion where we can kind of wrap our hands.
Yeah, that was very helpful.
Okay.
We will regroup and bring back a more comprehensive discussion in the
Okay,
future.
and we appreciate, Chief, your insights and look forward to sort of examining this some more. Councilor Noslerback?
I was just wondering, maybe if we could also have the judge come back and talk to us
Yep.
about it too, just in how that all works.
That'd be helpful.
too.
That'd be great. Yep.
Okay, thank you. And I know, Councilor Hoppy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to apologize and excuse myself for the remainder of the meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that you have sort of
We do.
marching
Thank you,
orders
Chief.
on that
Anything
one.
else on
Good. Then we'll look forward to.
No, we'll come back with more information. Did you want me to bring, I know a few people who are success stories, and they could probably come if you're interested in having a guest speaker come in and talk to you about how they dealt with addiction from their perspective.
You know, I think maybe sort of work with Mr. Goff and his staff to sort of develop whatever would make a good presentation. I think if we were able to have success stories or to be able to inform our discussion, but we'll sort of maybe leave it a little bit open-ended, if that's okay with Councilor Hutchinson. Okay, good. Okay, we will conclude that item and move to agenda item number 2. This is the Weapons Offenses Code Amendments. This is our second item, and this is sort of in response to the Braun Supreme Court decisions that we've had coming down over the last couple of years, and I'll go to Mr. Goff.
Thank you. Again, Mr. Dahl is here, but I'll quickly introduce this. If you remember, there was a citizen who came to council on December 12th of last year, informing council that certain sections of our code may be in violation of a recent Supreme Court ruling concerning weapons charges. So I will go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Dahl.
All right. Thank you very much, Council. You have this memo in your packets, and Mr. Goff has accurately identified that this really emanated from, in part, the citizen that did come in. And so let me tell you about that case and what we believe is the recommended changes that we are recommending be made to the Wheat Ridge's codes on weapons. This case was the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Braun, and it was decided in late last year. And in that case, the Supreme Court really said two specific things. It said, look, the cities have always regulated weapons, and the government has always regulated sort of where weapons can be carried and under what circumstances. And of course, that's been the subject of an enormous amount of public policy debate and push and pull throughout our country. But as regards city regulations, specifically, the Supreme Court said two things. First, that the regulation of where weapons could be, et cetera, needed to be looked at and governed through a historical lens. So what's the nation's historic tradition of firearm regulation? And it's a real U-turn, but what that basically means is, well, what was the historic tradition of regulation of firearms when the Second Amendment was adopted, and if I'm right in my constitutional history, in 1789. I could be wrong about that, but close enough. That's a long time ago, and so apparently the analysis now is, well, what was considered appropriate for weapons regulation then, and that's now our standard. Secondly, the Supreme Court said, well, even in 1789, there were sensitive places out there where the firearms regulation was appropriate. And so again, you have to kind of look at, well, what were the sensitive places at the time of the adoption of the Second Amendment? And I'm sorry, honestly, but we have to be looking at modern weapons regulations through the lens of what was true at that time, because you can understand the difficulty in really adopting a modern rule that is governed in that way. But that's what we have from the Supreme Court. That's not a decision that gets appealed. That's the last word on these issues. And you might ask, well, why should we change this just because of the Supreme Court? Maybe things have been unwound. It is important that we not be citing offenses that are clearly under the Supreme Court decision unconstitutional and having those end up in our municipal court and get dismissed. It's not something that we need to be doing, and most cities are responding in one way or another to this decision, bringing me to the few sections in the city's code that we're recommending for change based upon this decision. Not all of them are we recommending for change, and there's at least two where we're saying we think that the city ought to maintain. There will likely be additional litigation that'll throw a little more light on those issues. However, you'll see in the sections in the code, we have a code section that says it's unlawful to carry weapons in a car. And we've come to the conclusion that that's not going to be considered something that in the historic tradition of regulation of firearms was regulated. And so that is a section that we're recommending be repealed. However, there is a section on brandishing deadly weapons, and there's an historic tradition that you shouldn't carry arms in a manner likely to terrorize others. So we think there's historic support for that, not suggesting any change to Code Section 1686. The one that might get the most attention or concern from you is the prohibition on the carrying of weapons in bars where liquor is sold. Supreme Court, and there's really no case law that shows that there was a historic tradition of regulating weapons in bars as a sensitive location. And that is one that we're recommending for repeal. I do want to say that that's government regulation, and I distinguish that from what any owner of a private place can require. And so certainly private businesses and bars can certainly continue to prohibit the carrying of weapons in the bar. But we believe it's not a good case for us to be bringing that under our code section. We're recommending it be appealed. Lastly, there are two code sections presently that prohibit the carrying of weapons in the city's government buildings and in the city's public parks. And that's a little more nuanced in our opinion. The real question is, are all public properties by their nature sensitive locations in 1789 terms? Quite possibly not. But the two sections in the city's code, one prohibits carrying firearms in the city's government buildings. We believe that that's probably sustainable, and we would retain that. And similarly, public parks, that may be a little overbroad. It may well be that in the end, the case law will evolve from the Bruin case that carrying weapons in public parks is not by its very nature a sensitive place. I think we all would believe it probably is. There are children, all sorts of potential dangers for the carrying weapons in public parks. But that is one that we're comfortable leaving as is in the city's code. These are all sections that the citizen that came in said all of them have to be repealed because of the decision. We don't agree. It's more nuanced than that, but there are a couple that we believe are not ones that are worth taking on a challenge, because we think that if anything, the judge would probably just dismiss them if they went up on a conviction. We don't have a good belief that they would be upheld. Happy to answer questions on this if once we through the discussion. We do have a draft ordinance that makes these few changes. It's not very lengthy, and we bring that forward for first reading if you direct. Chief, did I leave anything out?
Nope. Thank you, Mr. Dahl.
Yep.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dahl. Discussion on this item. Councilor Weaver.
Thank you, Mr. Dahl, for that explanation. I just wanted you to repeat is it just the regulation for bars that they can put a sign that says patrons should not carry weapons, or is that something that any business owner can put up?
Oh, any business owner can put that up.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you bet. The city's code had to do with weapons in bars for good public policy reasons, and it's been there for a long time. But as a business owner, any business owner can prohibit weapons in their business.
Okay, and they can respectfully ask people to leave if they come in and a weapon is seen concealed or otherwise?
Yes, they can. It's private property. It's not public property, and so they have the right to do that.
Okay, thank you very much for clarifying that.
Yep.
Additional questions or comments on this item? Mr. Dahl, I had one or probably 100 on sort of this nation's traditions facet that the court has wandered into, and is this specific to the 1789 date, or does it go back to the traditions of colonialism, and does it transcend through time? So in the 1820s and 30s, the Civil War and thereafter, or is it sort of fixed? Is it fixed in 1889 to 1789?
1789. That's a really good question. It's not entirely clear from the decision, but the references in the decision to, the authors of the Second Amendment and the framers of that and what they knew then tells me that that's really the lens that they chose to apply. I suspect that interests on both sides of this question will look to find histories of regulation and non-regulation and bring that forward to the court. But for now, the best answer I have is at the time of the adoption of the Second Amendment.
Okay, so that would be the Second Amendment and not really the adoption of the Constitution itself. That's
correct.
Okay.
Yeah, but the first X number of amendments were rapidly adopted. Again, I should have gone back to my constitutional law book to be reminded that those amendments were adopted as a package shortly after the Constitution. But I'm embarrassed that I can't tell you. I should know when it was adopted, but 1789 sticks in my head, or shortly thereafter.
That's okay. You've been talking. If you had had a couple of minutes of downtime, you could have gone to Wikipedia, and then you would know that it went into effect on March 4 in 1789.
Terrific. Thanks for the help. I appreciate that.
Well,
I'll write it down.
any further discussion on this item?
Mr. Mayor,
yes,
can I just make one point
yes,
of
Judge.
clarification?
Yes, Chief.
I don't know if Mr. Dahl pointed it out, but there is, the way I read this, there's no distinction between a person with a concealed carry permit other than a law enforcement agent and any other citizen who's carrying it. So there is no exemption for that. I just want to make sure people are aware of that. And Mr. Dahl, am I correct with that?
That's correct. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Do we have consensus to move this forward to a council meeting? Yes. Show of hands. We do. Councilor Hutchinson, yes, we have consensus to bring this forward as an ordinance on first reading, I guess. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Any further discussion on the two agenda items that we have been considering? Okay. Staff reports. I'll go back to Mr. Goff.
Nothing else this evening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further elected officials reports? Okay, we confirm that we're back here in study session 1 week from tonight at 6:30.
We are.
Okay.
Talking about parking.
Okay. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Appreciate all of the input that we've had, and always appreciate our citizens coming forward to talk with us. If there's no more business to come before our study session, we will stand adjourned. Thank you.